Hello, this is Camellia. Well, I hope you enjoyed my previous lesson and they might help you a little bit in your writing. And today I'm going to do some quiz on different types of sentences. But before that, I'm going to point out some common mistakes that the majority of Vietnamese students make when it comes to writing. Okay? Well, there are two major mistakes that they often make. All right? This is known as fragment, sentence fragment, and run-on sentence. Okay? I already gave you two examples to illustrate how you make mistakes. Okay? Now, the very first one. I have a sentence, when we arrived, they had already left. Right? So what's wrong with this sentence? Can you have a guess? Okay. All right. The punctuation. When I marked the students' paper or writing, they often misuse punctuation. So when you misuse punctuation, okay, you will commit fragment, okay? Actually, this must be a comma. As I said before in the previous lesson, we're supposed to use a comma in the middle of the complex sentence, right? Okay? But a lot of students accidentally use a period or a full stop between the two sentences. So it doesn't make sense at all, right? So in this case, you're going to use comma. All right. How about run-on sentence? She told everyone to be quiet. Her favorite show was on. In this case, the writer didn't pay attention to the punctuation. That means he or she didn't use any punctuation at all. So the sentence just kept running and running, you know? Yeah. And I bet a lot of students make these kinds of mistakes, okay? Because they don't use punctuation at all in a sentence. How can we fix the sentence? She told everyone to be quiet. Her favorite show was on. First, you need to read this sentence out loud. She told everyone to be quiet. Does it make sense? Yeah. Her favorite show was on. Does it make sense? Okay? And then you have to analyze the sentence. Okay? How the sentence or clause here makes sense. Okay? How can we fix it? We're going to put a period. Right? To separate these two sentences. Okay? And you're going to use capital letter. Her favorite show was on. Again, she told everyone to be quiet. Her favorite show was on. But this one is not perfect, right? So why don't we use a coordinating conjunction to show the relationship between these two sentences? Okay? I'm going to rewrite this one. She told everyone to be quiet. And I'm going to use a comma. Right. Okay, so in the first lesson, I gave you 7 commonly used coordinating conjunctions. Do you remember them? Okay, so which conjunction should we use if you want to give a reason? So here you can give a reason why she told everybody to be quiet. We have, of course, for, right? So we use coordinating conjunction for to show reason, okay, why somebody does this or does that. For her favorite show was on. Okay, yeah, so this one seems better because there's a connection between these two independent clauses. Okay, yeah. So these are common mistakes that a lot of students make when it comes to punctuation. So remember, whenever you write any sentence, you have to make sure that you use punctuation correctly or appropriately. Okay? Yeah. So let's move on to the next part, our interesting quiz. All right, guys, do you have your pen and paper handy? Okay, let's get started. Well, so gonna begin with compound sentences with fanboys. Okay? I wrote half okay? The first half of the sentence. So your task is to complete the compound sentences using your own half, the other half, okay? Now, the first one. Elsie failed to get into the university of her choice. So, what's your half? Right? So here comes mine. So, she decided to start her own business. Okay. Again, Elsie failed to get into the university of her choice. This is an independent clause. It makes sense, right? What's the result? What's the consequence here? I used the coordinating conjunction so to introduce or show the result or consequence of the previous action or event. Right? So here I wrote down like this. So she decided to start her own business. Right? So a lot of people, when they fail to gain permission to their university of their choice, they often start up their own business, or some of them may stay at home. Okay, so in this case, Elsie decided to start up her own business. Does it make sense as a compound sentence? Great. Now, so let's move on to the second one. We have conjunction but. Okay, to show contrast. Jackie didn't like the show so much, but. All right, do you have any idea? Okay. And this is mine. But to me, it was absolutely perfect. All right, so Jackie didn't like the show so much. It's an independent clause. And I have another independent clause. To me, it was absolutely perfect. So I join these two clauses together using the coordinating conjunction but to show contrast. That means I and Jackie have different opinions. Okay? Yeah, reacted differently to the show. Right. And the next one. It's a small apartment. Yet. Again, so these two are the same, right? To show contrast, as I mentioned earlier. What's yours? And this is mine. It's a small apartment, yet it's extremely comfortable. Okay? It's a small apartment, yet, or but, it's extremely comfortable. I'm still happy with that. No complaint. Okay? And the next one, we have coordinating conjunction for to show the reason. Why? Okay? Why did she leave work early today? Yeah. So she left work early today for. What's yours? For she had to look after her mom at the hospital, for example. Right, again, she left work early today for she had to look after her mom at the hospital. Okay, because her mom was ill or sick, and she was taken to the hospital, so that's why she had to leave work early today to take care of her, to look after her at the hospital. And the next one, we have conjunction or, right, to show choices, okay, in case you have to make choices. We can cook dinner at home or, yeah, so this one sounds easier, right? Or we can go out to eat. Okay, and of course, sometimes you feel like cooking at home, doing some cooking at home, but sometimes you feel like you are in the mood to go somewhere else, just like for a change, yeah? So in this case, I'm going to add, we can go out to eat. You can choose your favorite restaurant to eat out. Okay. And the next one, we have conjunction and, if you want to add information, okay? The teenage boys sang. Okay, for example, imagine you are in a show, a live concert, you know, and the teenage boys, they were singing at that time while the teenage girls were dancing, for example. Yeah, so in this case, you can add more information. Okay, and the teenage girls danced. Okay. Right, so what did the teenage boys do? Oh, the teenage boys sang. How about the girls? And you want to add the girls, right? So, and the girls danced. Okay? And the very last one, we have nor. As I mentioned earlier, this one is quite special, so you need to pay attention to it a little bit. They had no food to eat. Okay, for example, on the street you see a lot of beggars and homeless persons, right? So normally they don't have food to eat. They have to rely on government for food and drinks every day. They had no food to eat, nor we have used inversion here, so that's why we have to place auxiliary, or helping verb before the subject. Nor did. Remember, this is a past tense, had, so here we have to use did, okay, auxiliary. Nor did they have shelter to get by every day. Okay? If you use helping verb before the subject, okay, this one, you just keep it like this, all right? You don't need to change it into past tense, okay, because we already used this one. So in this case, we have, nor did they have shelter to get by. Okay, so shelter means house or home, you know, where they can live or stay in, okay? Excellent. All right, so let's move on to complex sentences. All right, here we go. We have plenty of complex sentences over here. Your task is the same. You just complete these sentences using your other halves, okay? Now, in the first one, I used the subordinating conjunction when, okay, at the beginning of the sentence. So, you need to put a comma in the middle of the sentence, all right? Remember, use punctuation correctly. When he was a kid, what's your sentence? For example, when he was a kid, he was often getting into fights at school. Right? So he turned out to be a very aggressive kid, and I always wanted to fight against his friends or his classmates at school. All right. So the whole sentence is, when he was a kid, comma, he was often getting into fights at school. All right. And the next one, I used the subordinating conjunction although to show contrast. I managed to finish the report although. Again, what's yours? Although I was completely worn out or exhausted. Right, so you can use the phrase worn out or exhausted to describe a person who is pretty tired, very tired. Okay, Yeah. Again, I managed to finish the report, although I was completely worn out or exhausted. Okay? And the next one, we have subordinating conjunction because, to show the reason. Okay? I woke up late for my interview this morning because I couldn't get a good night's sleep. Okay. I woke up late for my interview this morning. Why? Because I couldn't get a good night's sleep. Alright, maybe I had been quite worried or nervous about the interview, so I couldn't sleep at all. I just kept tossing and turning. The next one, we have unless. And remember unless here. It's similar to if not. Okay. So if you use unless, you don't need to use not. Alright? So here in this case we have unless the plans change. That means if the plans don't change, what will happen? We will see each other. We'll see each other tomorrow. Okay, so you plan to meet each other tomorrow. If there's no problem or there's nothing cropping up, so you will definitely see each other tomorrow. Alright, so the next one we have as at the beginning of the sentence. Okay, so as here means while. Okay? Right. So while I was flicking through the magazine, here you go, we have the phrase of a flick through. What does it mean by flick through? Right, so flick through the magazine, that means you just move every single page quickly without ever noticing what's it about, okay? The content of the magazine. So as I was flicking through the magazine, I came across my ex-boyfriend wedding photos. Okay. Right. So I came across my ex-boyfriend's wedding photos. All right. So I felt very sad because he got married and he appeared in the magazine. Okay. And next one. My teacher scolded those students who they must have done something wrong, I guess. So my teacher scolded. What does it mean by scolded? All right, so scold here means you speak angrily, okay, angrily to somebody or to someone because they have done something wrong, which drive you crazy, okay? So my teacher scolded those students who had broken the windows, okay? All right? So these students had broken the windows. And that's why the teacher scolded them. The next one we have whenever. The dog barks loudly. Probably the dog really hates me. So the dog barks loudly whenever I pass by. That means I go past, okay? I pass by that house. All right. And the very last one, whoever shows up late for the meeting, or anyone, okay, shows up late for the meeting. What's the consequence for latecomers? Will be fired. Will be fired or kicked out of the company. For example, today, the director or the boss told all employees that tomorrow we're going to have a very important meeting. So please make sure that everybody must show up on time. Okay, so whoever shows up late for the meeting will be fired. All right, so in this case, we use complex sentence using subordinate conjunction, whoever, at the beginning of the sentence. Okay? And now let's move on to the very last part. We have compound and complex, the most difficult one, but you definitely enjoy it, okay? Okay, here comes the most challenging part, compound and complex sentence. Right, they seem quite complicated, right? But don't worry, I'm gonna help you. Now, let's start with the first one. We have Susie doesn't like horror movies. So this is an independent clause. And now we need to find out a dependent clause. And these two clauses are joined by the subordinating conjunction because. We use because to give the reason. All right, so you have to find out the reason why Susie doesn't like horror movies. Why she doesn't like horror movies? Think about it. Yeah? Because they are very scary. Yeah, because horror movies are very scary. Yeah? So, if Susie doesn't like horror movies, what will she do? So, what's your sentence here? So, I'm going to write down here. So, she never watches them. Okay? We have because and so. Again, let's have a look at it again. Okay, Susie doesn't like horror movies because they are very scary. So, she never watches them. So, because is used in a complex sentence. So, this one and this one form a complex sentence. And then, this sentence is linked with the next, okay, independent clause. So, we have compound sentence. So, all these clauses make up a complex and compound sentence using the conjunctions because and so. Okay? And the next one, we have when he won a full tuition scholarship to Harvard University. What a great news, right? So let's see how his parents react when they hear this news. Okay? Right? So here is my sentence. His father jumped for joy. Yeah, for example, his father was very happy when he heard the news. You can say, his father jumped for joy, was extremely happy. But, how about his mother? She must be very sad, right? But his mother was nervous or sad or worried about him. Okay, but his mother was worried. You know, women often worry about her child or her children when they go far away from home, you know. But instead, his father was really happy, okay, or jumped for joy when he heard the news, okay? Well, I do hope that these quizzes help you a little bit to figure out different kinds of sentences in English. And before wrapping up what we have learned so far, I would love you guys to bear in mind that whenever you write any sentences, you have to make sure that those sentences make sense. Yeah, for example, when you write down a simple sentence, you have to make sure that you have a subject and verb and object, and it can stand alone by itself. However, if you want to sound more complicated or complex, you have to make sure you include a subordinate conjunction in complex sentence or coordinating conjunction in compound sentences. Of course, compound and complex, okay, would be much better. Yeah, but anyway, you should not overuse one type of sentence, because if you write too many simple sentences, your writing will appear choppy. Choppy is referred to a style of writing when writers use a lot of simple sentences. You just imagine if you write a series of simple sentences, you see, all the ideas will be disconnected and people will not visualize or understand what you're talking about, and you cannot communicate your train of thought successfully. But what if you write too many complex sentences or a lot of compound and complex sentences at the same time? Of course, the readers and listeners will find it pretty hard or even very hard to understand your thoughts or your messages. So the best way is to balance them out. The best way is to combine different kinds of sentences together to make your writing seem more natural and professional. Okay? Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you again next time.